Hey everyone, it's Andy with Reverb, and next in our series on analog versus digital, we're talking about EQ pedals. This one's a bit of a rabbit hole because we have so many different applications and so many different types of EQ, from graphic to parametric. But I just want to give you a quick overview on the benefits of each camp, and then we'll do some quick side-by-side comparisons with analog and digital EQ pedals. There are quite a few factors to think about when looking for an EQ pedal. In general, analog EQs tend to be graphic equalizers like the Boss GE-7 or MXR10 band. These get the job done, but you don't get to choose the precise frequency to cut or boost, or how wide or narrow the band is. Parametric EQs do give you this option, and you can find some that are analog and digital. In the analog world, they tend to be only 2 or 3 bands, like the Wampler Equator. Thankfully, digital EQs can handle all these extra parameters in an affordable package, and not only give you more bands and precise control over the frequencies, but other benefits like preset storing, stereo ins and outs, and expression control. In the intro, you heard the Line 6 HX Stomp using a different kind of EQ treatment to transform a Jazzmaster into an acoustic, something that is rarely offered in the analog world. But one advantage of analog is its ability to overload and distort, like the Stone Deaf parametric distortion filter. Let's take a look at some side-by-side comparisons so we can find out the strengths and weaknesses of analog and digital EQ pedals. And it's a little bit apples and oranges with this Boss and this Line 6, not just because they're analog and digital, but you actually have more parametric control on the Line 6 because you have that Q width adjustment, whereas it's fixed on the Boss. And actually a funny thing about these faders on the GE-7, the more you increase it, that sort of smaller the Q gets, and this is sort of automatic, whereas on the Line 6 you have full control over that. So also another thing, you have different output levels. Here on the Boss you get 15 decibels of boost on the bands and the output, whereas the Line 6 only gives you 12. And I try to make it a fair fight by backing off on the 2 sliders on the 800 band and on the output on the Boss. But let's just adjust the Q width on the Line 6 and see how it affects the neighboring frequencies. Now we're much wider with that bell shape. And when you make it more narrow, it's actually less noticeable, especially on those low mids. So whether you're looking for analog or digital, having control over that Q or the bandwidth is really powerful, especially if you're kind of looking for that mid-range, cocked wah sound. Having a wider Q is really beneficial. It's long been said that the analog EQ can be a bit noisier, but some of those extra frequencies add a bit more character. It's kind of like a little bit of mojo, especially on some of that old rack gear you hear about. Now I have the Long Life from Fairfield Circuitry, which definitely has a bit of character. It has some Zener diodes in there, so there's a little bit of clipping, and it has a lot of resonance available with that Q knob. So it's definitely a different beast from, say, a very precise EQ like the Source Audio EQ2. So the Long Life goes up to 8K, so I'm going to kind of approximate around 4K boost, and that's what we're doing on the left with the EQ2. So let's just compare the two and then see how far we can take that resonance on the Fairfield. Here's an example to prove my point on how extra bands can be really helpful. I'm playing through my Fender Deluxe Reverb, which kind of has that scooped EQ curve baked in. So if we're dialing in something like a smiley face EQ on the pedal, you're boosting low end even more, and it's gonna kind of flub out, especially through this Fender. So I have the power to back off on some frequencies that are below the low E on this guitar, whereas on the GE-7 it stops at 100 Hertz. And if you're familiar with the frequency range of a guitar, the low E is actually 80 Hertz. So it's kind of dipping into those low strings. If you want to tighten it up, you can kind of go flat with it. But let's try how we can lower these frequencies that are really kind of interrupting the low end of the speaker and still maintain a fat sound. Well, there's a glimpse at analog and digital EQ pedals and what they have to offer. Again, with analog, it's sort of broader strokes with not as much flexibility with the frequency you could select, but sometimes that's all you need for guitar. And with digital, you get a lot more flexibility with presets, expression pedal control. But back to analog again, you get all those extra colorations like the PDF-1X with some distortion in the mix, or a little bit of high frequency oscillation with that Long Life parametric EQ. I hope you found it helpful, and stay tuned next time where we compare some more analog and digital offerings in a different category. Thanks for watching.